How's it going, you guys? So in this video I want to talk a little bit about my nutrition, supplementation, and training plan for the next couple of months. Okay, so for the last 8 months, okay, I've been following a very high carbohydrate diet. I just made a video talking about my experience with it. So that was the last video I posted before this one. If you haven't seen it, go ahead and go watch it. Basically, since like December of 2020 / January of this year, I have been following an extremely high carbohydrate diet, and that consisted of anywhere from 200 to 400 grams of carbohydrates on average. For a while it was just bananas, fruit, and honey. But then eventually I added white rice back into the program, and eventually I started experimenting with white sugar and even dextrose powder, because I really wanted to see once and for all, for sure, like how different carbs act on my body, since I already had like 2 years of ketogenic macros under my belt and competing in Muay Thai on a ketogenic diet. Basically what I eventually realized is around 50 grams of carbs seems to be the cutoff point, where if I go over 50 grams of carbs a day, I don't really experience any substantial improvement in my athletic performance. And in fact, I notice, especially after I go more than 80 to 100 grams of carbs a day, my sleep quality significantly decreases. Like, I notice I have trouble falling asleep, I have trouble staying asleep, and also I notice like 2 hours after eating a meal high in carbs, or just eating carbs in general, about 2 hours afterwards, I start to feel really tired and exhausted, basically. And it gives me this feeling of lethargy and malaise that I can't really explain, other than maybe just like hyperglycemia or hypoglycemia, or maybe some kind of hormonal like cortisol or adrenaline response to the carbs that I was eating, or maybe I just have some kind of bacterial imbalance in my gut or something that causes that. But I don't think that's the case. I think it's a blood sugar thing, honestly. But the only time that carbs don't make me feel like crap is if I eat them before a workout. So if I eat anywhere from 30 to 100 grams of carbs coming from dextrose or sucrose, like table sugar or honey, and then I go and train really hard within an hour after eating those carbs, the sugar problems don't really get me. But if I eat a half a cup of dry white rice, cooked obviously, and then I don't train afterwards, I actually just feel like shit. So, and especially if I eat white rice before sleeping, it seems to like really fuck up my sleep pretty fucking bad. It's terrible. So with that being said, high carb diet just seems to like kill my quality of life, my energy, and my athletic performance. And so it's like, well, this whole idea that I need to refill glycogen and shit is kind of, I don't really care at that point. It's an overall net negative. So anyway, what am I planning on doing now? So here's what I'm planning on doing. So basically eating my diet based on meat again. Gonna try to get about 200 grams of protein a day, coming from primarily red meat, but I'm gonna allow myself chicken and pork if I feel like eating that for whatever reason, just because I notice the most important thing in my diet seems to be getting enough protein, and then first and foremost. So that's going to be the priority, is 200 grams a day from meat. And then I'm going to, so basically I started eating fibrous vegetables again, as an experiment. And I actually really enjoy the taste of them, and Seems to make me feel more grounded, which is weird and interesting, and doesn't really seem to take away from my health. So I don't really care too much. I'm not dogmatic about it, but yeah, so basically allowing cooked cruciferous vegetables like broccoli, cauliflower, and then also carrots, and whatever other kind of like non-glycemic, I guess we'll say, like super, like basically very low carbohydrate, very low calorie, whatever, vegetables, basically allowing that in my diet just because I feel like eating it, I guess. But then I'll also be eating, I'm eating berries already, so like berries and, low glycemic load fruits, essentially, with my meat. And the main thing here is gauging my carbohydrate intake based on what I feel like eating versus doing it because I think I need it. So basically, I found I generally feel my best when I allow myself berries and mangoes and stuff like that with my meat based on what I feel like eating and generally that averages out to about 80 grams of carbs a day, give or take. Compare that to when I'm trying to follow this general consensus of carb intake that these gurus claim I need. If you're going to be an athlete, you need to fucking eat, 400 grams of carbs a day. And then I'm slamming down white rice to try to get that intake and feeling like garbage. There's a huge difference in my carbohydrate intake when I just am trying to fucking eat that much because I think I need it versus if I'm just eating it coincidentally as a result of just enjoying my diet. So if I stick to, non-starchy vegetables like broccoli and whatever, and then fruits, especially things like berries and whatnot, and mostly just frozen fruit that I eat with my meat, my carbohydrate intake ends up around 80 grams, and the types of carbs I'm eating are high fiber, super low glycemic load, which is going to blunt that insulin issue and the energy problems that I would have otherwise, and give me the whatever tiny amounts of trace carbohydrates my body really needs, because it seems to be very efficient at turning body fat into fuel, as you've seen from my ketogenic diet. But then, let's say I have a really hard training day where I'm really burning through glycogen. Any help my body needs with refilling glycogen on its own, because it'll do that whether you eat dietary carbs or not, it'll be helped out by the 80 grams a day I might be getting from the low glycemic load fruits and vegetables. So not only that, but obviously eating white rice and eating fucking dextrose and all that stuff, not really giving my body many nutrients, and super high glycemic load. So anyway, when I'm eating broccoli, cauliflower, carrots, obviously cooked enough to kill whatever anti-nutrients it might have, and then the berries and these fruits and things, not only am I avoiding a blood sugar spike because it has certain polyphenols and fiber that blunts the spike, but the concentration of carbohydrates it has is so low that it won't even matter anyway. I'll never be eating enough carbs in one meal to spike my blood sugar to make me feel like shit. And also, again, the fiber and polyphenols in those foods offset that anyway, or help to offset that, hypothetically. But yeah, I seem to do very well with that. So that's kind of the thing that I want to do, I guess. Beyond that, I'm also significantly cutting down on my caffeine intake. For a long time, I was consuming probably anywhere from 200 to 400 milligrams of caffeine during different periods of time. And this is not exclusive to this year. This was other times as well. But within the last month or two, I cut that down to about 160 milligrams of caffeine in the morning, And then if I have a second session later on in the evening, another 160 milligrams. Now, what a lot of people need to understand is that I seem to be a very fast metabolizer of caffeine. Maybe it's because, I don't know why, but that's the case. I can consume 300 milligrams of caffeine at 6 p.m. for my evening session and have no problem getting to sleep or staying asleep. Around 10 or 12 at night. Now, caffeine doesn't seem to affect my sleep quality, but if I eat a large amount of carbs, especially from like jasmine rice or white rice before I go to bed, that significantly fucks my sleep up. And this is coming from someone who had insomnia for most of their life, probably because they've been eating these carbs for most of their life. Crazy as that is, right? I wonder how many people experience insomnia coming from eating the wrong types of carbs and too high of amounts. But caffeine doesn't mess up my sleep, interestingly. But nonetheless, I'm still going to be keeping my caffeine intake controlled to around 160 milligrams per time that I drink it or whatever. And then only drink it in the evening if I have another session. And I've noticed as long as I am eating the right types of carbs and keeping them low, I don't really need another, dose of caffeine for normal daily work and activities later on. But for training, it really helps me push beyond my limits, which is important when your whole sport revolves around trying to choke other people and armbar other people and prevent other people from breaking you as well. So it's probably one of the hardest sports in the world when you really think about it. Grappling sports and jiu-jitsu, because the whole aim is to playfully kill the other person. Because if there wasn't a referee or a rule set, that's what would happen, basically. It's the closest thing you can get to killing someone without actually doing it, basically. And I'm just saying that because that's the intensity level we're fucking dealing with. It's pretty crazy, actually. So anyway, yeah, keeping the caffeine low. So what is my training looking like then? And so also in the mornings, not really eating anything. I'm planning on kind of just taking my caffeine or my coffee or whatever with my tonic herbs and supplements I'm about to mention here soon. And probably not any carbs or anything before training, just pure, basically fasting. But knowing myself, I might start experimenting with a tablespoon or two of raw honey or raw maple syrup before training. Might do that, but I'm planning on trying to just fast because I did that for a while and I noticed I always feel best when I do that. So what does my training look like? Well, actually, let's get to the supplements before I get to my training, since I'm already talking about my diet. So what's my supplement routine look like right now, and what am I planning on doing with my supplements alongside this basically Primal Blueprint style low-carb paleo/keto diet? And keep in mind, ketogenic macros are not fixed. An athlete like myself can enter ketosis and become keto adapted at a much higher carbohydrate intake than somebody who's not competing or an elite athlete or whatever. If you are following a ketogenic diet and you're an athlete, eating 80 grams of carbs a day, you're going to burn all that shit up with your exercise program. And basically your body enters ketosis and starts to adapt to burning more body fat as fuel when your liver glycogen is consistently depleted. So if I'm eating 80 grams of carbs a day, but I do 4 hours of intense training a day, I'm burning off that 80 grams of of carbs that I am eating, and my body's going to have to fuel a lot of that carbohydrate demand through the Cori cycle, pyruvate, lactate, what else? Glycerol backbone and triglycerides, and these other energy pathways from gluconeogenesis, which is predominantly fat driven, not freaking from protein or amino acids like people think. Anyway, so let's get into my supplementation. So recently I've been kind of experimenting again with tyrosine. So typical protocol is for a normal day or something not as demanding, I might take a half a teaspoon of this, which equals about 700 milligrams. But before a really hard training session, I might take a whole teaspoon, which is about 1,400 milligrams. And some people might think that's a lot, but actually the clinical dosage is around 2 to 3 grams, and all the way up to about 20 grams before a very stressful situation. And all of this does is it basically enhances my mental clarity, my sharpness, my motivation, and my energy, especially if you're sleep deprived and especially for athletic endeavors. But it definitely increases my dopamine functioning. So I like tyrosine, but that's not an everyday type of thing. Let's see. And then before bed, I like to take a half a teaspoon of reishi. And I just got this shipment in of Hyperion herbs, tonic herbs again, because I ran out for a while. I had to use Terrasol. This is Donwood reishi, if you can see that. I'll take a half a teaspoon. I notice it definitely increases the quality of my sleep, and it helps to keep me feeling grounded and to relieve a lot of, to negate a lot of stress, and helps with my recovery from exercise. And there's actually studies showing an improved testosterone to cortisol ratio when trained elite marathon athletes are taking reishi combined with cordyceps. So taking about a half a teaspoon of that now. I used to take a whole teaspoon. And I think it's also just great for keeping your immune system well versed and super high and whatnot, and functioning on high cylinders. Seems to also help with any residual allergic reaction I might have with food, because histamine intolerances and things like that. I think this actually has helped significantly with that. I noticed my respiratory system is a lot more clear, and I can breathe a lot better taking reishi. So then we got Mucuna. So with this one, again, it's kind of like same deal at the tyrosine, where I only take about a fourth of a teaspoon, and only before like harder training sessions. But I do really love reishi, Mucuna, and also taking Mucuna alongside a new herb that I'm trying out is kind of has a synergistic effect. So I'm also taking Hushu Wu from Hyperion Herbs, but seems like I left that in my cupboard and did not bring that with me to show you guys. But I am taking Hushu Wu from Hyperion Herbs now as well, and it seems to have just overall kind of like a ginseng type quality, where it boosts your immune system or your immune functioning, boosts your energy over time, increases longevity. It also is supposed to reverse hair loss and restore the health of the hair, the color of the hair, and things like that. Its main claim to fame is really helping with baldness and whatnot, which that's not why I'm taking it. But most reason why I'm taking Hushu Wu is its mood boosting, cognitive boosting benefits, and it seems to kind of level me out, increase my general sense of well-being and happiness. And a lot of that has to do with maybe its MAOI-B and inhibition qualities. So MAOI is basically an enzyme that breaks down neurotransmitters, and MAOI-B specifically seems to break down endorphins and dopamine. And so when you take Hushu Wu, especially on the side of things like Mucuna, tyrosine, and even cordyceps, it has a synergistic effect with keeping dopamine kind of running through your system, so you can stay motivated, energized, and focused throughout the day, and probably optimizes your testosterone to prolactin as well, because prolactin is directly an antagonist of dopamine and vice versa. So the more dopamine you have circulating, the less prolactin. The less prolactin you have, the better your hormone profile is probably going to be. Because prolactin also seems to be kind of antagonistic to testosterone. So I like Hoshu Wu, and I'm only on the second day of taking it, but I have taken it extensively in the past before. I've also been kind of experimenting with Astragalus lately, just a low dose. Who knows how little or how much of a benefit that's having, considering it's a Now Foods brand capsules, which are probably just raw Astragalus. Probably not going to have the same benefit as if I was taking it as a tea or an extract. So obviously I'm still taking half a teaspoon of cordyceps, and that is very good for boosting your ATP recycling, which improves your conditioning and your body's ability to repeat glycolytic activity. Works synergistically with something like creatine, basically, which directly provides your body with the raw materials it needs to create ATP. And also cordyceps improves oxygenation and circulation, and it seems to have a long-term regulating on the dopamine pathways. So when you first take cordyceps the first week, you might notice you have so much energy and you can't sleep, but you feel superhuman even though you're not sleeping. But then after a while, it actually seems to improve your deep sleep. So cordyceps is a great supplement to take, or a great herb. And keep in mind, if you are planning on taking cordyceps, you need to be taking a high quality extract, because the shit you'll typically find on Amazon or at the stores are just ineffective. They're not extracted properly, and you're probably not even digesting them, let alone getting the active constituents. So it's like you may pay half the price for a cheaper brand, but is it really worth it when it's not even having the effect that you are intending? So also been consuming gynostemma before bed. Actually, for a long time I was taking it in the morning, but I noticed I seemed to be getting tired and wanting to just kind of like relax after a while. So I realized gynostemma is not really having the energizing benefit I once thought it was. But gynostemma was actually starting to kind of like hinder my performance during the day. And that's probably because it has very relaxing qualities, despite some people taking it to boost energy in the morning. I find a lot of these so-called adaptogens like gynostemma and holy basil and ashwagandha, they tend to kind of like have more of a relaxing quality for the most part, depending on which one they are. It doesn't seem to adapt based on the time of day, people say. It seems to have a consistent type of effect that might change over time, but it's not something like, oh, it just provides energy, we need energy, and provides relaxation, we need relaxation. It seems to be a either or type of thing, and it might change over time, but you know, like right now it might give me relaxation, later on it might give me energy, but that stays consistent no matter what time of day I take, if that makes sense. So anyway, I've been taking a very small amount of gynostemma now before bed compared to before when I was drinking it all fucking day, because it seems to just cause relaxation and whatnot and ground me a little bit too much. So gynostemma, for those who don't know, also seems to have powerful regulating properties on the dopamine pathways, and it has overall a very immune building, energy building, longevity type benefit type effect. So it's probably the most powerful tonic herb on the planet, and that's gauged by its concentration of ginsenosides, which are the active constituents found in most ginseng plants, or plants that are claimed to be ginseng. So things like eleuthero, also known as Siberian ginseng, also plants like American ginseng, Panax or Asian ginseng, etc., etc. Those are typically considered the most cancer protective, the most immune building, the most longevity boosting, energy building over time tonic herbs you can take, and the ginsenosides are normally claimed to be responsible for that. Well, gynostemma has the highest concentration and the widest variety of ginsenosides on the market, and it's for it's like a quarter of the price even for the highest quality, which obviously Hyperion Herbs, I believe, is the highest quality. Which, by the way, I'm not getting paid at all to promote their products. It's just that they're the highest quality on the market, and you can tell from Brandon Gilbert's track record on YouTube, and the fact that he doesn't really seem to even try really hard to market his products, that he operates with the highest degree of integrity compared to these other people who are all trying to push supplements hard, and they're really trying to convince people. Brandon Gilbert just doesn't seem to care. And on top of that, he seems to really care about quality, if anything. And I don't even know if he makes money off of his herbs. I sometimes wonder, if he's just marketing, he's just putting his products out there because they're the best, basically, and he wants to share that with people. That's kind of what I believe, is that's the main intention, is he really just wants to share his products with people. But that's also why I spread awareness of his products, because I know that they're great, and I know that you're actually going to get the effect you want compared to the store-bought bullshit. And because he's been doing it for so fucking long, his products need to be experienced. That's my opinion. And also, they're the most potent that I've ever tried. So that's pretty much the thing. So let's see here. Now, that is a lot of herbs and supplements I'm taking, and I just realized how much I'm taking. And then also, I've been experimenting with holy basil extract by Now Foods before bed, and I kind of feel like their holy basil extract is not as good as it used to be, because I sometimes wonder if I even feel it, which is not a good thing when you're taking supplements. You should always feel something. Unless, of course, you're just unconscious and unaware and not very sensitive like the vast majority of the population. So anyway, and now that I think about it, the diet that I'm following is kind of like what is outlined here in the New Atkins for a New You, that basically recommends finding your own carbohydrate tolerance, which is what I'm basically doing. And so shout out to the New Atkins for New You by Dr. Finney, Volek, and Dr. Westman. They're the GOATs, the greatest of all time in the low-carb science scene. So, now let's get into my training. So what is my training looking like right now? So basically, I was making really, really good progress just using a science-based approach with the best of the best evidence we have as of recently. Mostly off of Dr. Eric Helms, is it Eric Helms? And Mike Teixeira, however you say his name, from Reactive Training Systems, where basically they work up to a top single, and I'm talking lifting right now, so I'm discussing my powerlifting now. They work up to like a top heavy set, whether it's a set of 3 or a set of 1, and it's basically either a PR set or like 2 reps in reserve, an RPE 8. And then they do back down sets where they'll take like 75 or 80% of that top set of the day, because you auto-regulate the top set. You work up to a set that feels heavy enough but not to failure. And then you basically, so that's auto-regulated top heavy set, and then you use percentages off that heavy set to hit your back down sets. So use 80% of your top set, and you do like 3 sets of 5 or 5 sets of 5 with that percentage of that top set for all your main lifts, and then whatever accessories you want to do after that. So that's what I was doing. And my bench press got back up to where it was before, and all my other lifts too kind of got back to where it was before. And probably if I was a smart man, I would keep doing that, because that's the golden standard of training anyway. All of my clients who are almost lifting as much as me now, unfortunately, and all of the greatest powerlifters in the world right now train that way. And it is a golden standard of science-based practice now in powerlifting. But for some reason, I decided I was going to go back to to a linear progression, kind of like a novice program. Now, the reason why I want to go to a novice program is, number one, because I have not ever really followed a proper novice linear progression program, and I kind of just like experimented my way to where I am now, which happens to be the golden standard of practice anyway. But I never did the linear progression, so I don't know what it feels like. I don't know if I'm missing out on anything, and there might be faster gains to be made from a linear progression model. That's the first reason why, because I've never done it properly before for a long period of time. The second reason why I'm going back to a linear progression model, which is like a 5x5 or a 3x5 model, and I'll explain exactly what it is here in a second, is because I felt like the way I was training before was just too heavy and too balls to the wall, and it felt like I was creating too much neurological fatigue that was making me more exhausted and less motivated and kind of just ruining my energy. And it seemed like I was in a constant state of overreaching for a long time, which makes you feel tired and lethargic. But I realize now that that's probably because of the high carb diet that I was on, and not as a result of my training, because I was training balls to the wall, doing just fine before when I was doing low carb, and then it's like when I started eating more carbs, I've had this trouble maintaining a vigorous training routine. So, so following a novice linear progression where I'm starting light and just adding 5 pounds every time, my body should basically adapt every single session before I'm lifting weights that are so heavy that it creates like a fatigued, overreaching type of side effect. So that's the biggest reason that motivated me to do it. And then the other thing is, I didn't know it, but Strong Lifts, which is like a really popular novice program, Strong Lifts actually has a linear progression that looks like I can push that even until my late intermediate phase. And I never knew this before. I thought Strong Lifts was just 5x5 all the way. So basically what I found is Strong Lifts, they have a paid premium app, which is really cheap. It's only like $3 a month. And basically it starts off with 5x5. You start off light, and then you add 5 pounds every session or every time you do that lift. So squats, you're doing squats every workout. Bench press is every other workout. Overhead press is every other workout. And then deadlifts is every other workout as well. And you're doing rows every other workout, which I think maybe if I did power cleans it would be better, but I'm just going to follow the program like it's laid out anyway. And so you're doing 5x5 for everything at first. And then basically, when one of your lifts stalls, you can turn that to a 3x5. And then after that lift stalls, after the 3x5 stalls on that lift, you can change that to a 3x3. And then once that 3x3 stalls, the last option is a 1x3. So some people might look at that and think that's stupid and you should just go to an intermediate program and get more volume and blah, blah, blah. But for me, I look at that and I realize that actually could be very effective if the person knows what they're doing. And so, first of all, let's be very clear here. The biggest reason why I'm not even scared to do this linear progression model with Strong Lifts is because every session you're adding 5 pounds to each lift. So that adds up very, very fast. So right now, for example, on squats, my first session was yesterday. I went really, really light. I went really low. I went to 225 pounds for a 5x5 on squats. And the thing is, in 3 months, I will be doing 5x5 with 405 pounds if I keep this up. So that's like 180 pounds, I think I calculated in 3 months doing 5x5 on squats. That's a lot of fucking progress. So the way I see it is, in 3 months, I should be 5x5ing 405. Or at least like if I'm doing 3x3 or sets of 3 with 405, to me that's not really time wasted at all. That is like a clear, like, never done linear progression again. If I win, if it works for me, then I'll be lifting huge numbers in a couple months. If not, then at least I'll know I tried, and I'll move on to probably the Texas method for a long time, and then maybe I'll move on to 531 once I hit the numbers I want for muscular endurance and shit like that. Because I just like the overall, I'll talk about that here in a bit. But basically, that's a huge thing, is that no matter what, I'll be squatting 405, I'll be benching like 335 or something like that for sets of 5 or sets of 3. I'll be deadlifting like 500 by that time, so that's pretty good. So another thing is 5x5 is a lot of volume, especially for lower body lifts, and the app allows me to change my 5x5 or 3x5 depending on what lift is stalling. So if my squats stall after a while, and they probably will because they're the most frequent and they're doing a lot of volume 5x5, I could just choose to change the rep scheme for the lift that's stalling. And if I'm still making progress on bench press, for example, at 5x5, I can keep doing that till it stalls. And the thing is, if I stall out on sets of 5 with a lift, and I move to sets of 3, the reason why that's productive is because at that point, I'm stalling on the 3x5 because the weight is so heavy that I can't maintain recovery from session to session with that same volume. But if I'm doing 3 sets of 3, that's so much more intensity with so much less reps and fatigue. I'll have less fatigue from that session at a higher intensity level, so I'll be able to recover more effectively. And that's what a lot of people don't understand. You don't really need more volume over time if your intensity is high enough to elicit a stimulus or an adaptation response. And by the time I hit 1x3 on the strong lifts progression, I'm going to be lifting so much weight that 1x3 at such a high frequency, that's already what a lot of the best lifters in the world are doing anyway. 1x3 at a 3 rep max is enough to create an adaptation with little fatigue, because it's not multiple sets at such a high intensity, that I'll be able to keep making progress at the same rep scheme for a long time. That's what I'm expecting, at least. Coming from someone who has read the literature and books and all these other people's experience and had experience himself with squatting to a max every day and benching to a max every day and experiencing progress with no plateaus. Another thing is, eventually, if I ever do stall at 1x3, I could actually just go back to either 5x5 or 3x5 and just keep that progression over and over again. Chances are, so maybe I'm just, I don't know, I'm thinking I'm going to be able to do strong lifts with this 5x5 and 3x5 and 3x3 then 1x3 type program. I could probably do this for a long time until I reach really high numbers. So I might never need to do an advanced program or anything, or an intermediate program or anything like that if I just keep this up. But the thing is, not a lot of people do that. But I have seen some elite level powerlifters. I have one friend who went all the way up to like a 600-pound deadlift in competition at body weight of 183 pounds. And he said all he did was 5x5 up to that point. He went up to a 400-pound squat and a 600-pound deadlift. No, a 500-pound squat, I think he said, and a 600-pound deadlift just with 5x5, which I thought was crazy. So people who do it right and they stick to it over the long term seem to ride it out to pretty large numbers. Even that guy Alex Bromley on YouTube said that he hit 5x5s up to like a 500-pound squat, which is pretty insane. So I'm going to see how that works out. So on top of the powerlifting routine, I'm just going to I'm going to improve my skill level by maintaining at least minimum one jiu-jitsu session every single day. I just need to be more disciplined and structured and organized with my schedule. Just because my personal training clients, my schedule with personal training and stuff has been interfering a lot with my training schedule, which has been weird. So every single thing has been kind of scattered as a result. So I was like, for a long time I was like, okay, I will sacrifice my training schedule to maintain my work schedule. But then I noticed my work schedule seems to get clustered and unorganized because I allow such huge variance. So then my whole entire life, including my work schedule, becomes unorganized. So now I'm just gonna stick to a schedule no matter what, with every aspect of my life, and and not let anything like compromise the other, and do my lifting, my strength and conditioning training, followed by my jiu-jitsu training, followed by all of my clients and everything for the rest of the day. And then maybe take the weekends off, but probably not. Take the weekends off of most work other than my health consultations. I usually do Sunday evenings on the weekends. And then what else? So we'll see how all this works. I'm pretty excited. I like having a really structured routine. I don't like this idea. I don't like all the carbs I've been eating. I don't like this like weird flimsy, sometimes I'll miss jiu-jitsu for something else I have going on. And a lot of times I'd miss lifting because I don't have a structured schedule. And it's like just too much chaos. And it's like sometimes people are like, they'll give in to the chaos and just let themselves be unstructured. And they'll do a little bit of work here, a little bit of this there. But it's like that actually seems to be the very reason why there's so much chaos in the first place. And people talk about getting overwhelmed and all this stuff because they have all this shit going on. But I don't know, I think the feeling of overwhelmment is because we don't have a strict schedule. And so I think keeping a strict schedule is important. So that's what I'm going to basically be doing now. And I'm going to try to implement a Jocko Willink type mentality where it's like, do the program no matter what, and don't rest unless you really, really have to, basically. And that just goes for everything in my life that's going on. And I think having the lower carb diet is going to help because my willpower and motivation just gets sapped from higher carb. Like, it's interesting because I've just been kind of like buying into what a lot of these experts say, like Dr. Mike Israetel and all these other people who claim to be like the voice of the evidence-based, science-based paradigm. And it's like, whenever I follow a science-based paradigm, so to speak, higher carbs, food quality doesn't matter, I'm Lane Norton, if it fits your macros bullshit, I always feel like garbage. So it's like, do I want to do the virtuous thing and follow the mainstream paradigm if it makes me feel like shit? Or do I want to just accept the fact that, hey, even people who are seen as quacks, like Dave Asprey, what they say in their books, like literally Dave Asprey in his books, what motivated me to want to do keto a long time ago in the first place was people like Dave Asprey talking about how eating higher carb saps your willpower, and eating these so-called toxic foods sap your willpower. And I find basically what these people like Dave Asprey and Mark Sisson talk about in their books are very, very accurate. And my experience reflects what they say. So I'm going to see how that goes for a while. And I know it's going to take some time for my jiu-jitsu performance to probably adapt, which is why I might allow myself a little bit of honey before training. But after a couple weeks, I mean, honestly, I'm probably not going to have the same fluctuations in energy levels, so that's going to be good. Just that I won't have the same kind of muscular endurance and power while doing jiu-jitsu that I normally would. my strength training is never affected by low carb though. So we'll see as we go along. I'll keep y'all updated. So hopefully I touched on everything we need to know. And yeah, so also probably going to do more conditioning and stuff just for fun, for the sake of my mental health, because I don't think lifting weights really boosts my mentality unless it's for higher reps, and clearly I'm just doing really heavy powerlifting shit and then jiu-jitsu on the side. Jiu-jitsu is the only thing that gives me the type of endorphin benefit of endurance type training. So I might start doing more long distance walking and running and heavy bag work like I used to, and stuff like that, mostly just to keep my mental well-being up, running high. So anyway, leave your question, comments down below. I'm going to probably indulge myself in some type of high-fat treat real quick, and I'll talk to y'all next time.